experiences in technology and leadership with others. She is here today with her panel to share some of the key skills that have supported her in finding ways to thrive in tech. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Alana.
Great, thank you so much. I feel like that's an excellent, as a example of a key tool, a really excellent example that we just heard from Catherine. And I want to thank you all for joining this session today. I'm really excited to bring to life the stories and exercises in the Adventures of Women in Tech, where I interviewed over 80 plus women, but also from a follow-up workbook coming out this spring. In both of those books, I talk about 5 key tools that I saw women leverage in their journeys in tech and elsewhere, collected from speaking with all those women as well as my own experiences. And those 5 tools are, and Catherine mentioned standing on the shoulders of others, same thing here. So you'll recognize some of these from other places as well. They are resilience, marketing 101 or self-marketing, asking for what you want and what you need, finding support, and finally, owning your awesome. How do we carry with us the feeling that we are worthy? So we're going in panel format today to dig into what these are and key takeaways that each of you can use in the future as you think about these tools. So I'm going to tee up a little bit for Margaret and Tal to introduce themselves. But first, a short story about how we met. We 3 belong to a group called Enrich, which is a knowledge network that brings together leaders from tech into curated groups. And then we get to build skills relevant to our roles in technology. And I think, as I recall, like, we're in a group, we're the 3 women, and we kept calling on each other, I think, to sort of build and yes and make sure that we were heard, and we just naturally did it. We didn't talk to each other, and we didn't say like, oh, we're going to support each other, but we ended up doing it really intuitively. And so as I was thinking about who could join me today and talk about these tools, I thought, what about these women I've grown super close to and who've already been a little bit of a support network without us even really talking about it. So really quick, Tal, Briller, 1 minute. Introduce yourself, what you do currently, and a fun fact.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Really, really happy to be here today. And Alana's book is amazing and really helped me. So I'm super happy to talk about the practical tools in the book, and generally I'm a practical person. So I love the notion of this session. So like Alana said, my name is Tal Briller. I'm Chief of Staff and Senior Director of Operations in VMware, Networking and Security Business Unit. And fun fact is that I do have a license to drive a tank. Not a super useful skill for life, but my time in the Army did teach me that even goals that seem very unachievable are actually within my reach. And also, first time I realized as a woman, I probably have to work much harder than men to achieve the same goals. So I'm super happy to be here again.
Margaret Petrus.
Okay, Margaret Petrus. I am so glad I'm here with these ladies. As Alana said, we've been helping each other without explicitly voicing it out loud in so many different ways, especially during the pandemic. I am in engineering. I lead a big data networking and security analytics product in VMware. One of the things I like to do is helping coach people, basically guiding them to avoid the mistakes I did in my career. So it'll be a little bit smoother. And when I see the results, that makes me really excited.
Well, great opportunity to do the same today.
Mhm.
So, okay, first question. In my book, I talk about 5 tools that I saw women build to progress their careers in tech. Just to repeat them really quickly: resilience, marketing 101, asking, finding support, and owning your awesome. So, what do you think the hardest tool has been for you to learn in your journey in tech, and what helped you learn it? We'll have both of you answer this. Margaret, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. I think for me, the one that's most challenging is Marketing 101. And I still have not found a good way of using that skill to benefit with my career growth. I think it's easier to do it to market someone else, but to market oneself is extremely challenging, and especially depending on the culture you come from, you're always told to be modest. And I don't see that in my kids, of course, they grew up here, but you're taught to be modest and not say, so it's very hard to toot your own horn. And sometimes it is needed. And I think what I still have trouble with it, but what helps me is taking baby steps towards it. And when I do that, it's a little bit better. People actually, oh yeah, you did that. And I'm like, people just won't know everything that you do automatically. Everyone is busy with their own lives, and talking a little bit about it helps. And it also benefits your team, which is very important.
Absolutely. I think starting small always helps. And then also, you added it at the end, but I do think sometimes we're able to get over the hump when we have to do it to help others.
Yeah, I think that's much, much easier. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Tal, you're muted.
Oops, sorry. I really relate to what Margaret said. The one that is harder for me is always being owning your awesome. To this day, I don't feel comfortable talking too much about what I've done, what I've achieved. And much like Margaret said, being modest was ingrained in me growing up as a core value from my parents. But I do realize today it is super important to talk about these things, and some things get unnoticed, even with the best intentions, even if you have the best managers and the best leadership team. So you do need to find a way to do it in a way that is comfortable for you.
Right. There's first feeling it yourself and then figuring out how you can feel comfortable with telling other people, right?
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk a little bit. We're going to do a rapid fire later. And so I think y'all made me answer that one. So I have an answer for that when we give advice. You are also both managers and mentors. You mentioned it a little. How have you advised women on these skills? And do you find common areas of struggle? Margaret?
Yeah. In a technical discussion, let me give you an example. So I had this engineer who was working for me. She's grown leaps and bounds now. But I remember when she started, she was unsure about herself. And, at times, some of the not being sure came because she was discussing with senior engineers, and at other times, like, people questioned her, oh, you are a mentor, or you are like for an intern mentorship. So it probably could be asked to a guy, could be asked to anything, but it was a little bit, she felt unsure about herself to continue. And one of the things I told her is ignore about what they say. What someone says about you doesn't define you. Believe in yourself. And just because they said something about you doesn't mean it 100% applies to you either. It may not. And it's like, don't let anyone slot you in a corner and say, this is what you're capable of doing. That's just not true. one example I had was with one of my bosses some time back, and he gave me this feedback rating, and I was challenging him, and I was asking him, this doesn't make sense and all that stuff. After a while, he just looked at me and said, why do you care what I think so much? I'm just one person telling some opinion. It's also, whatever you have in mind, I may be completely wrong. And then he gave me this example of how for his promotion to principal engineer, distinguished engineer, half the committee said no. He said, it doesn't matter as long as, there are people who believe in me, I believe in myself, and I got promoted. And I think some of it is also encouraging people, I feel, you don't have to have that 100% sort of everyone agreeing with you. Share your thoughts, it's okay to be wrong, and that'll help you grow, actually.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of good stuff there, because I do feel like we're raised to want to always be 100% right and 100% liked in this sort of supporter role, and to step out as a leader and be okay with being wrong or having someone not like us is really hard.
Yeah, I've gotten that feedback even in my career. One of my earlier directors, he looked at me and said, if you know 90%, just raise your hand and offer to do it. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. There are so many people here who raise their hands and they don't even know 50% of it. So I think, taking the chance a little bit, believing in yourself that you can figure out that remaining 10%. Yeah.
Totally. Tal, anything to add?
Yeah, I think owning your awesome is definitely a common area of struggle for many women. I know so many amazing individuals that just don't realize how amazing they are. And I think one thing is that I've seen, mostly with women, they assume they will not be able to do a certain role, to take on responsibility of a certain position. They just assume so because of whatever. It could be related that, I can do 90% but not 100, or for other reasons, and they block themselves. They don't even try. So just having someone tell them, hey, you can do this, and you can do this even if you think you don't have the 100% list of skills that are listed, and you will be able to balance work and life if you take this role. That's another area where I've seen women kind of block themselves because they believe if they take the next leap, they will not be able to balance work and life. So just reinforcing that it is doable, that other people have done it and survived is really important.
Yeah, I think it's hard. As you get more senior, you typically get more optionality as you do that and more flexibility, but it's hard to see before you're there. And so you sort of put the constraints of now onto the future and assume you can't do it.
Exactly.
Higher salary, could you afford help with a higher salary and people listening to you? Could you move those 8 a.m. meetings so they're not at 8 a.m. anymore, right? Like there's a lot of things that can move around as we get more senior. Going back a little bit, actually, instead of thinking forward, but thinking back, if you were starting over your career today, is there one of these skills you'd prioritize learning more over others or practicing more earlier? Tal, let's start with you this time.
Okay, I think for me, I don't know if it's one specific skill, but more of kind of the understanding that for years, I've thought that if I just take on more and more responsibility, more and more work, somehow it will get recognized and I'll be able to kind of step up to a new role. And what I've realized over the years is, yes, taking on more work and responsibility is important, but it's not enough. And some of the skills that you are mentioning in your book, or the combination of all of them, are super critical as well. You need to understand where you want to go next. What are the skills that you'll need to develop in order to get there? Work on acquiring these skills, and in parallel, work on the relationship side with people on showing what you're doing. So when the right opportunity comes, you have the right sponsors there that know your skills, that know what you're doing, and you're ready to get there with the right skill set. So it's a combination of things, and it's not only about like working 24/7 and delivering, solid results.
And I do think that works early in our career sometimes, where you just deliver results and you get recognized early. But at some point, other people start to move into leadership roles. You didn't express interest in them. You didn't get ready for them. You didn't build sponsorship for them, and you start to see the difference over time. Margaret, anything you'd add?
Yeah, it's along the lines of what Tal was saying. And the thing is, sometimes you tend to think, okay, why is this guy getting promoted, or why, she's getting passed or something like that. I am sure some of it could be potentially biased, but I think a lot of it is also on the individual, because I believe that there are things that we don't do that will enable getting us more visibility and helping us with our career growth, that I see many of the guys do automatically. And so those things are things which we need to be really work and try to figure out what are those things that I need to work on. Some things you think, oh yeah, I don't need to send an email about this. I've done this work, this is it. Just a simple email sending and saying, oh yes, this was achieved by the team, blah, 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 can work miracles. And those, or just giving a shout out to the team. And I've explicitly started doing those things, and it benefits the team. And I also think that's important in a leader per se to do. So, it's part of marketing, it's part of asking for things, but it's a lot of those things you need to do as you grow up in your career. And when I see, so it's not a matter of whether it's like, oh yes, I'm not getting the chance. You go ask for the chance, because no one's going to just give the chance. Go ask for the chance and say, I can do this, I can deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think when people tend to look back on themselves, they do often wish that that their younger self had spoken up more, had felt braver, had this and that. And I think it's just interesting how often we'll figure it out when we start to do it for other people. When we have to speak up for a team member, or when we have to speak up for someone else at work. And that it takes us that journey to realize we should be doing it for ourselves. I think that's probably, my guess is it is more common amongst women, because we are traditionally raised by society to be caretakers of others. And that molds and shapes the way we're raised. And, things where we're told to like be quiet and behave, whereas the boys can roughhouse and speak up or whatever. And I think that just it's changing, obviously. But I think you do see a lot of that. And so it's interesting to see just how common that journey is, that when people look back, it's often that thing. For me, it's ask. I did not ask for what I wanted, what I needed until my 30s. Like I went all through my 20s just doing what other people wanted and hoping that matched up with what, would get me promoted.
Same here.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it works out, but sometimes you're going to have to speak up. Okay, so we're going to transition into a rapid fire round. I'm just checking time to make sure. Where are we on time? Okay, my computer doesn't want to tell me. I'll look.
You're at 3:20. You have 10 minutes more, so you're good.
We're perfect. We're right on time. Okay, rapid fire questions where I am just going to yell out one of the tools at you, and you are going to tell me something that you did or something that our audience could do to build or practice that skill. And so it's more like a sentence or two. And we're just going to help folks with a little bit of a push today on what they could take away and leave with. So resilience, Margaret.
Okay. Just do what you think you can do. Ignore when someone says, oh, you can't do it. It happened to me on a project. Folks, multiple people, very senior level, also told that this can't be done within this period of time. We made it work. we got it to run, and it won the Best Judge Award. So believe that if you think you can do it, of course, if it's something huge and you cannot do it, then yes, you can't say you can do it. But most of the time, if you believe in yourself, in your capabilities, you can go for the moon.
Yes. So one of the muscles that we can build is sorting out good feedback from bad feedback and really thinking about what are these things people are saying to us and what is helpful from what they are saying to us and what is not. Absolutely. Thank you, Margaret. Okay, marketing 101 or self-marketing. You all shrugged at me and said I should do this one because you were still working on it. So I went back to the workbook to take a look at some of the exercises that we run through there. And I'm going to start with the first one, which is actually starting with describing yourself. And not necessarily thinking, I think sometimes people sit down and they try to brand themselves or go really fancy on this. I'm not trying to come up with the be all and end all of how you'll talk about yourself forever or what would go on your Instagram. I'm just thinking about it's so hard to market ourselves. How can we first sit down and think about 5 words to describe ourselves? Come up with 5 terms that describe yourself. And when I did this with women in the first book, it was often really difficult for them to do because the humble thing kicked in. But also, if you looked, they would sort of like, they would unconsciously maybe use the negative term for something like aggressive instead of assertive. Or, they wouldn't want to compliment themselves. So they would maybe leave out things that they really thought about themselves. So I think when you do this exercise, the way that we've laid it out in the book, it's really good to think about those terms for yourself, then weed out the negative terms and replace them with the more positive connotations. And then ask friends and family, what would they say? How would they describe you in 5 terms? And come up with sort of that mix and then use that as you think about what's important to you, right? Does that 5 terms feel organic to you? Could you then use any of it actually in your resume or your Instagram? So for example, I came up with, in doing an earlier exercise like this, people-focused leader. And if you look on LinkedIn, I use it. I've used it on my internal resume at Google. I use it on my webpage at Google. And so I think that it's small, it's safe. You can decide whether you use it, but it's a good exercise to kind of check what you're doing. And maybe I was always very self-deprecating, maybe weed out some of that and start to just use the more positive terms for yourself. So that's my example. Okay. Number 3, asking for what you want and what you need. Tal, what do you think?
I think for me, what worked really well is doing enough preparation, really thinking before I come to the meeting to talk about what I want, whatever it is that I want to ask for, really be prepared with notes and what I want to say. It boosts up your confidence and helps frame the ask in the right way. And a second thing is I would not focus about my reasons for asking, what will I get out of it? I focus on the why for the company. Why whatever I'm asking or trying to advocate for will have a positive impact on the team, on the company, or what OKRs, whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, there needs to be a match between what the company needs, what will help benefit the company, to what we're asking for in the context of our work environment. So these 2 things helped me a lot. Start with the why for the company, and frame the conversation around that.
Yeah, and I think that often does help us get over our humble holdback, because we've really come up with why this ask is important for my team. Or often when I go, for example, and talk about salary, I'll say, hey, and if I can't talk to you as a senior woman at Google about salary, who could? Right? I need to be able to do this with you, and I need to be able to pave the way. And I do think it also helps because society still views us very much as caretakers of others. And so you get over a little bit of maybe that trigger that people might have about women appearing to brag or be selfish, which hopefully we will continue to evolve over time, but is still present. Okay, finding support. Margaret.
For me, finding support really when there was a change in my career was finding the right mentor. This goes back to what what Catherine was saying as well. Finding your right set of mentors who will actually tell you the truth as is and will help you navigate through some of those challenges. Because sometimes people can say, hey, this is not right. But if you don't know how to go around that or figure out, then you're pretty much lost. And for me, it's surprising. In my management role, I did get feedback from a VP, but some of the feedback I got from an engineer really, really helped me, whom I really looked up to and who gave me good feedback, because I was an engineer for the longest time. I went into management pretty late. So getting those techniques enabled me to help grow my team more effectively. So I would say finding support is getting a good set of mentors, people who will make the time for you, who will give you the time, and will actually, you can be pretty honest with them and get good feedback. And if you are a leader, you can also help find mentors for your engineers or your teammates. Sometimes people don't know how to go find mentors, don't know how to ask. And sometimes what I've done is gone and see who is a suitable mentor and try to match people up. And some cases it has worked. And in some cases, it also depends on the dynamics between the two people. So for me, mentors have been a great source of help.
Awesome. Yeah, I think if you're a manager, definitely help, because often people are sitting there being yes, but how do I find a mentor?
Yeah.
In the workbook, I have an exercise called 3 questions, 30 minutes that I really recommend. But the gist of it, honestly, is come up with your 3 questions and reach out to people you're impressed by. And just say, I've got 3 questions. It'll take 30 minutes. I love how you do X and Y. Are you up for a chat? And it's a great way to start a relationship and get going.
Yeah, it can be in any area, preferably someone in a leadership or a senior position, so they can guide you from their experiences, but it doesn't have to be in one particular area.
Yeah, absolutely. Look for diversity there too. And then lastly, owning your awesome tall.
So I think one thing that has helped me that I can share is once a quarter, just take some time to think about the impact you had, the things you were able to accomplish in the last quarter, and even write it down. Just looking at what you were able to accomplish sometimes help with that sense of, I was able to really do a lot of things last quarter, and these things had a huge impact, so it helps. And not necessarily related to owning your awesome, but I'll mention it since we're in the topic. When you're in a meeting or whatever other circumstances, and you see someone is doing a really great job, call it out. Send them an email, call them, just show them that you have seen that you're seeing how awesome they are. It really goes a long way and it helps.
Yeah, that built-in recognition and gratitude for what others are doing, I think is lovely. Definitely highly recommend that. Just, I think it makes us feel good too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at the end of our time. I don't know if there were any questions. I didn't see any pop up, so I just kept going. Any questions we should cover before we close out? I just want to thank Tal and Margaret for the time today and for sharing all their stories and advice. And I just am really thankful that we had some time together. Always love the feedback if folks have other things that we should be adding to our lists or talks. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us to do this panel, Alana, and
thanks, Alana.
for all the tools, for everything you're doing to help other women. Thank you so much.
We'll get there.
Thank you.
We'll get to 50 40%, not just 30%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you again, Alana, Margaret, and Tal, for inspiring others by sharing your experiences in tech. It makes such a difference to others, and just knowing some practical tools and advice that we can apply in our careers and even day to day. So we appreciate you joining us today and sharing with us. As a reminder to everyone, New York Times bestselling author and podcast host, Lovey Ajay Jones, will be closing our session today as our keynote speaker. And that session will begin shortly at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So we hope to see you there. And thank you everyone for attending, and take care.